New York, the city of dazzling lights and burning dreams. But beneath its glamorous surface lies stories that often go unnoticed. Today's story will take you on an emotional journey, from the harsh reality of life on the streets to the light of hope and truth. This is the story of Liam, a homeless man forgotten by the world. But with the help of a kind stranger, his life was transformed forever. A tale of compassion, resilience, and the power of truth. If you like our story, please like, share, and subscribe to see more videos in the future. New York, a city that never sleeps, where dreams are forged in the glow of neon lights and ambitions thrive amidst its towering skyscrapers. The city pulses with energy, each corner alive with stories waiting to be told. Yet beneath this glittering exterior lies a contrasting reality, hidden in the shadows of its bustling streets. This other New York, shrouded in anonymity, is home to the forgotten, the unseen souls navigating the margins of a society that has turned its back on them. Their struggles, etched into the cracks of the pavement, are drowned out by the ceaseless rhythm of life. Liam was one such soul. He had not always been invisible. Once, he had been a man of promise, a person with dreams as vast as the city skyline. But dreams have a way of crumbling under the weight of misfortune, and now, he sat hunched beneath an oak tree on the crowded Fifth Avenue. The world moved past him with relentless indifference, a tide of hurried footsteps and unseeing eyes. Liam had become a shadow among shadows, his existence reduced to survival. Each day was a battle. Hunger clawed at his stomach, a relentless reminder of his dire circumstances. The biting wind cut through his tattered jacket, chilling him to the bone. And yet he stayed rooted in place, refusing to beg. His pride, though battered, was the one thing he had left. Just one more day. He whispered to himself, the words a fragile mantra. Maybe tomorrow will be different. But the hours stretched on, as they always did, and tomorrow remained an elusive promise. The golden light of the setting sun spilled across the city, softening its harsh edges. It was a fleeting beauty that Liam barely noticed, his gaze fixed on the ground. His jacket, worn thin and patched in places, clung to his frail frame as though trying to shield him from the world's apathy. The aroma of freshly grilled hot dogs wafted through the air, an invisible torment that twisted his insides. He could hear the laughter of children passing by, their carefree voices a cruel juxtaposition to his hollow hunger. Yet Liam stayed put, his pride an anchor that kept him from sinking into the depths of desperation. Even as the smells and sounds taunted him, he remained motionless, lost in a sea of hopelessness. It was then that a shadow fell across him, breaking the monotony of his existence. A figure stepped into his world, bringing with it an unexpected warmth. Liam looked up to see a young woman standing before him. Her long brown hair caught the last rays of sunlight, casting a soft halo around her face. Her green eyes, vibrant and kind, met his with an expression that held no pity, only sincerity. She was a stark contrast to the chaos around them. The busy streets of Fifth Avenue seemed to blur into the background, their noise fading into a dull hum as Liam focused on the woman before him. She wore a simple yet elegant dress that swayed gently in the evening breeze, her presence exuding a calm that felt almost surreal amidst the city's relentless pace. "Would you like a sandwich?" she asked, her voice soft yet steady. Liam blinked, startled by her words. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to him with such kindness. He struggled to process her question, his mind clouded by disbelief. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" he managed to croak, his voice hoarse from days of silence. The woman smiled, a gentle, genuine smile that seemed to light up the space between them. "I'm Emily," she said simply, placing a paper bag into his lap. "And I thought you might need this." Liam's fingers trembled as he closed them around the bag. The warmth of the sandwich inside seeped through the paper, a small but profound reminder of human connection. For a moment, he hesitated, overwhelmed by the gesture. It was such a small thing, and yet, to him, it felt monumental. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "You have no idea how much this means to me." Emily nodded, her smile unwavering. Without another word, she turned to leave, her footsteps quiet against the pavement. Liam watched her go, his heart heavy with gratitude and something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. But as he opened the bag, ready to savor the first proper meal he'd had in days, his eyes fell on two other homeless men sitting nearby. They watched him with hollow eyes, their gaunt faces mirroring his own hunger. Liam paused, his gaze shifting between the sandwich and the men. Without hesitation, he tore the sandwich into 3 equal parts and walked over to them. "No one should go hungry if we can help each other," he said, his voice raspy but resolute. The men accepted the food with quiet gratitude, their eyes shining with a glimmer of hope. From across the street, Emily had paused, her breath catching as she watched the scene unfold. The bustling chaos of New York City seemed to fade into the background, its noise and motion dulled by the quiet intensity of the moment before her. Liam, hunched and weary beneath the oak tree, had taken the sandwich she had offered and torn it into 3 equal pieces. With hands that trembled, not from hesitation but from exhaustion, he walked over to 2 other homeless men sitting nearby, their hollow eyes fixed on him with a mixture of longing and despair. Emily had expected gratitude, perhaps a quiet thank you or a nod of acknowledgement. But what she witnessed was far more profound. Despite having so little, less than most could ever imagine, Liam had chosen to share. He didn't hesitate, didn't consider saving the meal for himself. Instead, he divided the small offering into thirds, ensuring that each man received an equal share. His voice, though rough and raspy, carried a warmth that resonated even from a distance as he spoke to them. She couldn't hear his exact words, but the way the other men's faces softened and the tension in their shoulders eased told her enough. Her chest tightened, a wave of unexpected emotion crashing over her. The lump in her throat grew, and for a moment she felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. In the glaring light of Fifth Avenue, surrounded by towering skyscrapers and the rush of indifferent pedestrians, this simple act of kindness stood out like a flame in the darkness. He's not just surviving, she thought, her heart swelling with a mixture of admiration and sorrow. He's holding on to his humanity. This realization struck her with an almost physical force. In a world that seemed so consumed by self-interest, where success was often measured by what one could take rather than what one could give, Liam's selflessness was a beacon of light. His actions were unassuming, quiet, and profoundly powerful. They spoke of a resilience that went beyond mere survival, of a strength rooted in compassion despite the harshness of his circumstances. Emily lingered on the sidewalk, her gaze fixed on the trio beneath the tree. The scene imprinted itself into her mind with a vivid clarity she knew she would never forget. The way Liam had walked with purpose despite his weariness, the way he had extended the pieces of sandwich as though offering a gift, and the way the men had accepted it with silent gratitude, it was all so achingly human, so real. She felt as though she were witnessing something sacred, a fleeting glimpse of the kind of goodness the world so desperately needed. The city moved around her, oblivious. Pedestrians hurried by, their faces set in determined focus, their minds occupied with appointments, meetings, and errands. Cars honked impatiently, and street vendors called out their wares, the smells of roasting chestnuts and hot dogs wafting through the air. Yet none of it touched Emily in that moment. She stood rooted to the spot, her heart and mind entirely consumed by what she had seen. She thought about the world Liam lived in, a world so different from her own. A world where every day was a battle against hunger, cold, and the crushing weight of invisibility. Yet, even in that world, he had chosen to share the little he had. The contrast was stark, almost jarring. Emily couldn't help but wonder, how often had she passed by people like Liam without a second glance? How many times had she been too consumed by her own life to notice the struggles of others? Her gaze drifted to the other men, their faces etched with the lines of hardship. She saw the way they looked at Liam, not with pity, but with a kind of quiet respect, as though his act of kindness had rekindled something within them. It was as if, for a brief moment, the heavy burden of their reality had been lifted, replaced by a shared sense of connection. It was humbling, even from a distance. Emily's thoughts turned inward, her own sense of privilege weighing heavily on her. She had always considered herself a kind person, someone who cared about others. But watching Liam, she realized that kindness was more than a passing gesture or a well-meaning intention. It was action. It was sacrifice. It was choosing to give, even when you had every reason to hold on to what little you possessed. The sleek black car parked nearby gleamed under the afternoon sun, its polished exterior a sharp reminder of the divide between her world and Liam's. Emily knew Miranda was waiting for her, no doubt impatient, and ready to deliver another lecture on the rules of their social status. But for the first time, Emily felt a deep, unshakable conviction take root within her. This moment, this simple act of humanity, was something she couldn't ignore or forget. She inhaled deeply, the crisp city air filling her lungs as she gathered her thoughts. She didn't want to leave, not yet. The weight of what she had witnessed demanded more than a fleeting pause. It demanded reflection, change, and perhaps most importantly, action. She stood there a moment longer, allowing herself to feel the full impact of what Liam had shown her. Compassion wasn't just a choice. It was a necessity, a lifeline that connected people in ways that transcended circumstances. Finally, with one last glance at Liam and the men beside him, Emily turned to head back to the car. Her steps were slow, deliberate, as though each one carried the weight of a newfound understanding. As she approached the vehicle, the noise of the city rushed back in, a cacophony of sounds that felt overwhelming after the quiet poignancy of the moment she had just experienced. Miranda's sharp voice greeted her as she opened the door, but Emily barely heard it. Her mind was still with Liam, under the oak tree, sharing what little he had without hesitation. As the car pulled away, Emily gazed out the window, her reflection merging with the cityscape. She knew she couldn't change the world in a single day, but she also knew she couldn't remain silent or passive. Liam's selflessness had lit a fire within her, a determination to do more, to be more. Her heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude and resolve, and she silently vowed that this moment would not be the end but rather the beginning of something far greater. From across the street, Liam had taught her something profound, something she would carry with her always. Even in the smallest acts, there was the potential to create ripples of change. And in a world often consumed by self-interest, those ripples were what kept humanity afloat. Inside the car, Emily's stepmother, Miranda, waited, her perfectly manicured hands resting on the sleek leather of the steering wheel. Miranda was a woman of sharp edges, her every movement exuding an almost calculated precision. Her tailored attire, flawless and devoid of a single wrinkle, was as much a shield as it was a statement of power. She radiated an air of authority that seemed to demand obedience without question. Even the way she sat, her posture impossibly straight, conveyed an unspoken message: she was in control. As Emily climbed into the car, the tension was immediate and palpable. The click of the car door closing might as well have been the strike of a match igniting an invisible fire between them. The atmosphere grew heavy, charged with the unspoken battle of ideals that loomed between the two women. "What were you doing back there?" Miranda demanded, her voice cold and clipped, cutting through the silence like a blade. "I was helping someone who needed it," Emily replied calmly, her tone measured but firm. She met Miranda's gaze briefly, her green eyes steady despite the storm brewing beneath her composed exterior. Miranda scoffed, her lips curling into a disdainful smirk. "Helping? Don't be naive, Emily. People like him choose to live like that. They're not worth your sympathy." Her tone dripped with condescension, each word deliberately designed to dismiss and belittle. Emily turned fully to face her stepmother, her expression fierce and unyielding. "No one chooses to live on the streets," she said, her voice steady and unwavering. "You don't know his story. How can you judge him without understanding?" There was fire in her eyes now, a defiance that Miranda had seen before but never quite this strongly. Miranda's expression hardened, her icy demeanor unrelenting. Her eyes narrowed, her voice sharpening with irritation. "You don't understand how the world works," she said, her tone low but forceful, as though each syllable carried the weight of unshakable truth. "We are not like them, and the sooner you realize that, the better." Emily fell silent, her jaw tightening as her hands clenched in her lap. She knew there was no point in arguing further, not with someone so entrenched in her worldview. But even as her voice stilled, her resolve remained firm. She wouldn't let Miranda's cynicism extinguish the compassion she felt so deeply. Instead, she turned her gaze to the window, her reflection merging with the blurred cityscape outside. It was a quiet but deliberate act of defiance, a refusal to let her stepmother's words take root in her heart. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the hum of the car engine. While Miranda's disapproval lingered like a shadow over the space, Emily's mind remained fixed on the man she had just helped and the simple yet profound humanity of his actions. Later that night, Miranda sat alone in her lavish study, a space meticulously curated to reflect her power and taste. The polished mahogany desk gleamed under the dim light of a single lamp, its soft glow casting long, jagged shadows across the room. The faint aroma of aged wood and the sharper scent of her red wine filled the air, mingling with the silence that seemed to press in from every corner. She swirled the glass absently, her perfectly manicured fingers tracing its rim as her thoughts churned with irritation. Emily's actions gnawed at her, a persistent thorn that pricked deeper with every passing moment. To Miranda, they weren't just misguided, they were dangerous. She saw Emily's compassion not as a strength, but as a liability, a weakness that threatened to unravel the carefully constructed world Miranda had fought so hard to maintain. The image of Emily handing a sandwich to that man lingered in her mind, sparking a bitter resentment that simmered just beneath the surface. "She needs to learn a lesson," Miranda muttered under her breath, her voice heavy with disdain. Her words echoed softly in the stillness, a vow to herself as much as a statement. Taking a deliberate sip of her wine, she turned her sharp gaze toward Emily's father, Harold, who sat on the other side of the room, his brow furrowed in quiet disapproval. Harold, a mild-mannered man who rarely challenged Miranda, frowned as he set his own glass down on the side table. "She just wants to help people," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "What's so wrong about that?" Miranda's laugh was bitter, a sharp, biting sound that cut through the air like a knife. "Helping people?" she repeated, her tone laced with contempt. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as her voice dropped to a cold, measured cadence. "That's a luxury we can't afford. Emily's naivety is going to ruin everything I've worked for. She needs to see the world for what it really is, Harold. And if she won't learn on her own, I'll make sure she does." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication, as Harold shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His eyes searched Miranda's face, looking for a trace of the woman he had once admired, but all he saw now was an unrelenting determination, hardened by years of control and ambition. "Don't you think you're being too harsh?" he asked tentatively, though he already knew his question would fall on deaf ears. Miranda dismissed his words with a wave of her hand, the gesture as sharp and final as a judge's gavel. Her mind churned with plans, each one colder and more calculated than the last. She couldn't allow Emily's idealism to jeopardize the family's pristine reputation. In Miranda's eyes, the world was ruthless, and survival required strength, not sentiment. If crushing the idealism that burned so brightly in Emily's heart was the price of preserving their legacy, then so be it. The faint clink of her wine glass settling on the desk punctuated her resolve, a chilling reminder of the lengths she was willing to go. The Howard estate, once a silent fortress of wealth and calculated manipulation, had transformed into a haven brimming with life and purpose. Where cold marble floors once echoed with the sound of hollow footsteps, now there was a constant hum of activity. Under the compassionate leadership of Liam and Emily, the mansion had shed its old identity to become a vibrant community hub, a sanctuary for those in need. The sprawling estate, once a symbol of exclusivity, now opened its doors to all, offering a second chance to those who had known only hardship. Inside the mansion, the grand chandeliers, which had once bathed lifeless opulence in their golden glow, now illuminated a different kind of richness, the hopeful faces of families who had found refuge within these walls. The dining hall, once reserved for Miranda's extravagant feasts, had undergone a profound metamorphosis. The long, polished table was no longer adorned with crystal glasses and rare delicacies. Instead, it held trays of steaming, simple meals, prepared with care. The laughter of children and the murmur of conversation filled the room as people shared their stories over meals, forging bonds that transcended their struggles. The gardens, which had once been a manicured display of Miranda's vanity, were now alive with the sound of children's laughter. The sprawling lawns became a playground where little ones chased each other under the watchful eyes of volunteers. The air was filled with the scent of freshly cut grass mingling with the sweet aroma of blooming flowers, their vibrant colors a testament to the new life that had taken root here. Volunteers moved purposefully, organizing supplies, preparing meals, and tending to the needs of the guests with a sense of urgency tempered by compassion. Each corner of the estate seemed to breathe with new purpose. Hallways that had once been silent now buzzed with footsteps and conversation. Rooms that had stood unused for years were filled with bunk beds and shelves stocked with donated clothes, toys, and books. The library, once a private retreat for Miranda's pretentious display of intellect, was now a quiet space for learning and reflection, where children eagerly flipped through colorful books, and adults attended workshops aimed at rebuilding their lives. For Liam, every small success felt like reclaiming a piece of himself. He often stood at the entrance of the mansion, his silhouette framed by the grand doors, watching the steady flow of people coming and going. Mothers with children, weary travelers, and individuals with stories etched into their tired faces, all found solace here. He saw in their eyes reflections of the man he had once been, lost, desperate, and searching for a glimmer of hope. Their gratitude and resilience strengthened his resolve. He promised himself that as long as he had the power to make a difference, no one who walked through these doors would have to endure the isolation and despair he once knew. Emily, too, poured herself into the mission with tireless dedication. She had become the beating heart of the operation, her warmth and compassion drawing people to her. Her presence was like a soft light that made even the darkest corners of the mansion feel welcoming. She listened intently to the stories of those who sought refuge, her green eyes never wavering as she absorbed their pain and triumphs. Her empathy was a balm to their wounds, and to those who had felt invisible for so long, she made them feel seen. One evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Liam and Emily found a rare moment to sit together and reflect. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the estate. They sat side by side on the mansion's front steps, their shoulders nearly touching, as the day's activity began to quiet. The air was filled with the scent of blooming jasmine and roses from the garden, mingling with the faint aroma of food being prepared inside. A gentle breeze stirred the trees, carrying with it the soft hum of crickets and the distant laughter of children still playing in the garden. Liam gazed out at the garden, his expression thoughtful. The golden light of the setting sun highlighted the contours of his face, making him appear both serene and resolute. After a long pause, he broke the silence. "Do you remember the first time we met?" he asked, a small smile tugging at his lips. Emily turned to him, her eyes sparkling with the memory. "Of course I do. You were sitting under that oak tree on Fifth Avenue," she said softly. "I'll never forget the look on your face when I handed you that sandwich. You looked surprised, almost like you didn't believe it was real." Liam chuckled, the sound low and warm. "I didn't think anyone could surprise me anymore," he admitted. "But you did. That moment. It felt like someone had finally seen me, like I wasn't invisible for once." Emily reached over and placed her hand gently over his. Her touch was warm and steady, a silent reassurance. "You were worth seeing, Liam," she said, her voice tender but firm. "You always were." For a while, they sat in companionable silence, watching as the first stars appeared in the evening sky. The world seemed to slow down, the weight of the past lingering like a soft echo. But it no longer felt heavy. Instead, it was a reminder of how far they had come. The mansion, the people, the laughter, and the hope, it was all a testament to their journey and their determination to create something meaningful from the ruins of their lives. As the night deepened, the estate glowed softly under the moonlight. Lights from the windows spilled onto the lawn, creating a mosaic of warmth and life. The sound of distant voices and the clinking of dishes drifted out, a gentle reminder that the work they had begun was far from over. But for now, in this quiet moment, Liam and Emily allowed themselves to simply be, grateful for the present and hopeful for the future. The Howard estate had become more than a building, it was a symbol of transformation. It stood as a reminder that even the darkest places could be filled with light, that kindness and determination could create ripples of change. For Liam and Emily, it was not just a sanctuary for others but a home where they, too, had found their purpose and peace. The Howard Community Center quickly became more than a sanctuary. It transformed into a symbol of renewal, resilience, and the boundless impact of compassion. Word of its transformation spread far beyond the local community, capturing the hearts of people from all walks of life. The story of Liam and Emily, their struggle and triumph, resonated deeply, inspiring waves of generosity. Donations poured in steadily, not just in the form of money but also supplies, services, and heartfelt letters of encouragement. Former guests of the center began returning, not as individuals seeking help, but as volunteers eager to give back to the very place that had given them a second chance. They brought with them a sense of purpose and gratitude, their presence adding yet another layer to the mansion's vibrant tapestry of life. Together, these individuals created a ripple effect, spreading the values of empathy and community far beyond the mansion's walls. The Howard estate, once a cold monument to Miranda's ambition, now stood as a beacon of hope. From the brightly lit windows came the sounds of laughter, the murmur of shared meals, and the quiet determination of people rebuilding their lives. Its impact was no longer confined to the people within. It reached neighborhoods, towns, and cities beyond, becoming a lighthouse for those lost in the storm. For Liam, the transformation of the mansion was deeply personal. Often, in moments of quiet, he found himself standing in the garden or by the front gates, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought him here. His memories of life on the streets were vivid and unrelenting, the chill of winter nights spent huddled beneath threadbare blankets, the gnawing emptiness of hunger, and the pervasive sense of invisibility. But interwoven with those memories were glimmers of hope, moments of human connection, like Emily's simple act of offering him a sandwich, that had illuminated his darkest days. Liam recognized that those struggles had shaped him. Without them, he wouldn't possess the empathy or perspective that now guided his actions. They had taught him the value of kindness, the importance of dignity, and the strength that lay in vulnerability. Each success at the center, whether it was a child's laughter, a family reunited, or a former guest finding employment, felt like reclaiming a piece of himself. Emily, too, had undergone a profound transformation. Her defiance of Miranda's cynicism, once a small spark of rebellion, had grown into a blazing fire of conviction. She had turned away from the narrow path of privilege and indifference that had once defined her life, embracing instead a journey of purpose and compassion. Her unwavering commitment to helping others did more than reshape her own existence. It ignited a movement of empathy and community action that rippled far beyond the walls of the Howard estate. Emily had become more than just a leader. She was a source of inspiration for countless individuals, her warmth and determination a guiding light in their lives. Emily's transformation was visible not only in her actions but also in her presence. She exuded a quiet strength, the kind that drew people in and made them feel safe. Her ability to listen, to truly hear the stories of those around her, created a space where vulnerability was met with understanding rather than judgment. People looked to her not just as a helper but as a symbol of hope, proof that even the smallest gestures of kindness could lead to monumental change. Often, Emily could be found standing quietly in the garden or the dining hall, her green eyes observing the bustling activity with a mixture of pride and humility. The garden, with its vibrant flowers and the gentle hum of life, had become her sanctuary. She would pause amidst the roses, their petals glistening with dew in the morning light, and reflect on the journey that had brought her here. She saw in the faces of the center's visitors echoes of her first encounter with Liam, the vulnerability in their eyes, the tentative hope that flickered just beneath the surface, and the incredible potential for transformation waiting to be unlocked. Each face was a reminder of how far a single act of compassion could reach. The dining hall, once a cold and grandiose space reserved for Miranda's hollow displays of wealth, now radiated warmth and life. Emily often stood in the doorway, watching as families shared meals and laughter, their voices filling the room with a sense of belonging. The sight moved her deeply, grounding her in the knowledge that the work they were doing mattered. It humbled her to think that all of this, the laughter, the connections, the hope, had begun with one simple gesture, offering a sandwich to a stranger on a busy city street. This realization was not one Emily carried lightly. It infused her every interaction with a sense of purpose. She made a point to speak with each person who came to the center, whether it was a child clutching a toy or an adult struggling to rebuild their life. She reminded them, with gentle words and unwavering belief, of the power they held within themselves to create change. "It all starts with one step," she would say, her voice steady and encouraging. "One step forward is all it takes to begin." Her compassion was infectious, inspiring not only those who sought help but also the volunteers and supporters who worked alongside her. They saw in Emily a leader who led not with authority but with empathy, someone who understood that change required both action and heart. Her determination became the cornerstone of the center's mission, a driving force that kept its doors open and its spirit alive. As Emily walked through the center each day, she felt the weight of responsibility balanced by the joy of purpose. She understood that her role was not just to help but to empower, to create a space where everyone felt valued and capable of contributing. She believed deeply in the ripple effect of kindness, in the idea that even the smallest gestures could inspire others to act. This belief guided her, reminding her that the work she and Liam had begun was far bigger than either of them. It was a movement fueled by humanity's innate capacity for good. While Liam and Emily thrived, Miranda's life unraveled in stark contrast. The revelations of her fraud and betrayal spread quickly, tarnishing her once immaculate reputation. Her name, once synonymous with influence and sophistication, became a byword for greed and deceit. The story broke in a high-profile investigative report, detailing the lengths Miranda had gone to manipulate those around her for personal gain. Headlines splashed her face across newspapers and television screens, branding her as a symbol of unchecked ambition and moral decay. The media frenzy that followed was relentless. Journalists dug into every aspect of her past, unearthing decades of deceit. Every scheme, every underhanded deal she had orchestrated came to light, painting a damning picture of a woman who had built her empire on lies. Former allies distanced themselves, eager to avoid being tainted by association. Once celebrated for her sharp business acumen and social prowess, Miranda became a pariah almost overnight. The invitations to exclusive events stopped coming, her social circle dissolved, and the carefully constructed facade of her life crumbled before her eyes. The legal repercussions were swift and unforgiving. A team of investigators launched a comprehensive inquiry into her financial dealings. The evidence against her was overwhelming: falsified documents, misappropriated funds, and a trail of manipulation that spanned years. The grand estate, once her fortress, became a crime scene as authorities executed search warrants, carting away boxes of evidence. Witnesses came forward, many of them people Miranda had wronged, eager to testify against her. Miranda's first court appearance was a spectacle. The courtroom was packed with reporters and onlookers, all eager to witness the fall of a woman who had once seemed untouchable. She entered the room flanked by her attorneys, her face a mask of forced composure. But the cracks in her armor were evident. Her eyes, once sharp and calculating, were dulled by exhaustion, and the confident gait she had once commanded was replaced by hesitant steps. The charges against her were extensive, ranging from financial fraud to conspiracy. As the prosecution laid out their case, detailing how Miranda had exploited her position for personal gain, the weight of her actions became inescapable. Witness after witness recounted stories of betrayal and manipulation, painting a picture of a woman consumed by ambition. The jury listened intently, their expressions a mix of disbelief and disapproval. Miranda's defense team attempted to shift the narrative, painting her as a misunderstood figure who had been unfairly targeted. But the evidence was too damning, and the public's opinion had already turned against her. Every court appearance was accompanied by a swarm of protesters outside, holding signs that read, "Justice for the victims," and "No one is above the law." The final verdict was a devastating blow. Miranda was found guilty on multiple counts, including fraud and embezzlement. The sentence was severe: years of imprisonment, and the forfeiture of her remaining assets. The grand estate, which had once been her symbol of triumph, was permanently repurposed as the Howard Community Center, its new mission standing in stark contrast to the legacy Miranda had tried to build. Isolated in her stark prison cell, Miranda had ample time to reflect on the choices that had led her there. For the first time, regret pierced the armor of her arrogance. The power she had clung to so fiercely now seemed meaningless in the face of her reality. Stripped of her wealth and influence, she was left to confront the emptiness of her pursuits. She thought often of Emily and the life she was building alongside Liam. The transformation of the estate, once a monument to Miranda's selfish ambitions, into a haven for those in need, haunted her. She wondered what might have been if she had embraced compassion rather than control, if she had nurtured relationships instead of manipulating them. The loss of her status was painful, but it was the bridges she had burned that weighed on her most heavily. She realized, perhaps too late, that power without purpose was meaningless. As the days turned into months, Miranda found herself grappling with a sense of remorse she had never allowed herself to feel before. Whether it was enough to redeem her was a question only time could answer, but for now, she sat alone, the echoes of her choices a constant reminder of the life she had squandered. As the celebration at the Howard Community Center carried on into the evening, the mansion stood like a beacon against the canvas of the night sky, its lights glowing warmly amidst the surrounding darkness. The sprawling estate, once silent and foreboding, now pulsed with life and joy. The sounds of laughter, music, and heartfelt conversations flowed through its halls and out into the garden, blending harmoniously with the gentle rustling of the evening breeze. Guests moved from room to room, their voices rising in animated discussion, their faces bright with the shared celebration of hope and renewal. Liam and Emily navigated the crowd with ease, pausing to greet familiar faces and express their gratitude to the volunteers who had poured their hearts into the center's mission. Their smiles were genuine, their eyes reflecting the profound sense of accomplishment and connection that filled the air. Each handshake, each embrace, was a testament to the community they had built, a community rooted in compassion and the belief that change was always possible. The Howard estate had transcended its physical structure to become a living testament to the transformative power of kindness and determination. Its walls, once cold and unfeeling, now seemed to hum with the stories of those who had found refuge and rediscovered hope within them. The laughter of children echoed through the grand dining hall, where families and volunteers shared meals and stories, their voices weaving a tapestry of resilience and joy. The once grand ballroom, where Miranda had hosted her opulent gatherings, now served as a space for community events, its polished floors alive with the footsteps of people dancing, playing, and simply enjoying life. For Liam and Emily, the center was more than just a sanctuary for others, it was a reflection of their own journey. Every corner of the estate bore witness to the pain they had endured and the purpose they had discovered in its aftermath. The transformation of the mansion mirrored their own transformation, turning despair into hope, pain into purpose, and isolation into community. Liam often found himself pausing to take it all in, his heart swelling with a gratitude that words could never fully capture. For him, every smile he saw and every laugh he heard was a reminder of how far they had come. Emily, too, was deeply moved by the vibrant life that now filled the estate. She would stop to watch children chase each other in the garden, their laughter ringing out like music under the glow of the moonlight. She saw in their joy a reflection of the small acts of kindness that had built this community brick by brick. Every story she heard that evening, Whether it was a former guest recounting their journey back to stability, or a volunteer sharing what the center meant to them, reinforced her belief in the boundless power of compassion. The Howard Community Center stood not just as a building but as a beacon of light for those who had lost their way. Its very existence was proof that even in the darkest times, a single spark of kindness could illuminate the path forward. It was a place where lives were rebuilt, where connections were forged, and where hope was reignited. For Liam and Emily, it wasn't just about what the center had accomplished. It was about the promise of what it could continue to achieve, a legacy that would inspire for generations to come. That night, as the celebration drew to a gentle close, the garden surrounding the Howard mansion seemed to exhale, its vibrant energy softening into a serene embrace. The lively chatter of guests had faded into the distance, leaving behind a tranquil stillness broken only by the rustling of leaves in the cool night breeze. The moon hung high above, a luminous orb casting its silvery light across the sprawling garden. The flowers, their colors muted in the pale glow, appeared ethereal, as if they belonged to another world. Liam and Emily found themselves sitting on a stone bench nestled among the roses. The delicate fragrance of the blooms mingled with the earthy scent of the garden, creating an atmosphere both soothing and nostalgic. The mansion loomed behind them, its windows glowing warmly like a beacon in the darkness. From within, the faint sounds of laughter and music still lingered, a testament to the joy that had filled the evening. Liam turned to Emily, his heart brimming with emotion. The journey that had brought them to this moment felt both surreal and deeply grounded. He had spent so many nights under a canopy of stars, feeling abandoned by the world, yet here he was, a man reborn in purpose and hope. His voice was soft, almost hesitant, as he asked, "Do you think we've done enough?" Emily met his gaze, her green eyes reflecting the moonlight. She reached out, her hand brushing gently against his cheek, her touch a quiet reassurance. "Liam," she said, her voice filled with warmth and conviction, "we'll never stop trying. There will always be more to do. But what we've done so far, it's more than I ever imagined." Liam nodded, her words settling in his chest like a balm. He leaned back, his eyes drifting upward to the star-studded sky. The constellations seemed to twinkle with a quiet encouragement, as if reminding him of the infinite possibilities ahead. "I used to think the world had forgotten me," he said, his voice tinged with wonder. "But now I see, it's never too late to start again." For a while, they sat in companionable silence, the kind that required no words. The garden seemed to hold its breath, as if honoring their reflections. The soft rustle of leaves whispered around them, carrying with it the echoes of the evening's celebration. Liam's mind wandered back to the faces he had seen that night, children laughing as they darted between tables, mothers smiling through tears of gratitude, former guests returning not as seekers of help but as volunteers giving back. Each one carried a piece of the story they had built together, a story of second chances and unwavering compassion. Emily, too, was lost in thought. Her gaze wandered over the flowers, their petals glistening with dew like tiny jewels in the moonlight. She thought about the journey that had led them here, the risks they had taken, the struggles they had faced, and the victories, both small and monumental, that had defined their path. She thought of Miranda, of the mansion's dark past, and how they had transformed its legacy into something beautiful. For Emily, this garden, this moment, symbolized everything they had fought for, a space where hope could flourish. "Do you remember the first time you showed me this garden?" Liam asked, breaking the silence. His voice was filled with a quiet nostalgia. Emily smiled, her eyes lighting up with the memory. "Of course. It was just after we decided to turn the mansion into a community center. You stood right there," she said, pointing to a spot beneath a tall magnolia tree, "and told me that this garden felt like a place where new beginnings could take root." Liam chuckled softly, the sound warm and unguarded. "I didn't know then how true that would be," he admitted. "This place. It's grown into something I never could have imagined." Emily nodded, her hands slipping into his. "It's because of you, Liam. Because of your courage and your belief in what could be. You saw more than just a house. You saw a home for so many people. He shook his head gently. It wasn't just me, he said. It was us. Every step of the way, it was us. The mansion behind them seemed to pulse with life, its walls now a haven for stories of renewal and hope. The people who had once sought refuge there had become its heartbeat, their resilience and determination breathing life into its every corner. The thought filled Liam with a profound sense of gratitude. I used to think I was alone in the world, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But now I see that every connection we make, every hand we extend, it all adds up. It all matters. Emily squeezed his hand, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It does matter, she said. Every single act of kindness matters. And what we've built here, it's proof of that. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, their light a quiet reminder of the vastness of the universe and the endless possibilities within it. Liam tilted his head back, letting the cool night air wash over him. For the first time in years, he felt a deep, unshakable peace, a sense that he was exactly where he was meant to be. As the night deepened, the garden became a sanctuary of stillness. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, their movements a silent dance under the moon's watchful gaze. Liam and Emily remained on the bench, their presence a quiet testament to the power of redemption and resilience. The journey they had embarked on together was far from over, but in this moment, they allowed themselves to simply be, to breathe, to reflect, and to dream. The mansion's lights began to dim as the last of the volunteers retired for the night. The celebration had ended, but the work would continue. Liam and Emily knew that their story, their mission, was not just about the past or the present, it was about the future. It was a story that would ripple outward, touching lives they might never meet, inspiring others to believe in the possibility of change. As they rose from the bench, hand in hand, the garden seemed to bid them farewell, its beauty a quiet promise of the hope that would carry them forward. Together they walked back toward the mansion, their hearts full, their resolve unshaken. It was a story of compassion and courage, a story that would continue to unfold for generations to come. Liam's and Emily's story is a powerful testament to the fact that even the smallest act of kindness can change an entire life. From the depths of despair, he rose, driven not only by his own determination but by the compassion he encountered along the way. His journey with Emily is more than just a tale of reclaiming justice. It is a profound reminder that purpose can be found in the simplest of acts, in the quiet moments when we choose to extend a hand to someone in need. This story teaches us that the ripple effects of kindness are immeasurable. A kind word, a look of understanding, or a single selfless act can spark a transformation that reaches far beyond what we can imagine. These moments of connection remind us of our shared humanity, and the power we hold to make a difference, no matter how small the gesture may seem. Thank you for watching today's story and for taking a moment to reflect on the strength of compassion. If you found it meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Join us in exploring more inspiring stories that show how hope and kindness can change the world. We'll see you in the next video.